All right, let's dive into one of the most profound and honestly challenging stories ever told, the Book of Job. For thousands of years, this text has fascinated and frustrated people, and today we're going to try and figure out why.
I mean, it's the question, right? The one that keeps us up at night. And this ancient piece of wisdom literature just walks right up to it and tackles it head on. But the answer it gives is probably not what you're expecting. You see, the Book of Job is so much more than just a story. It's a masterpiece that really pushes us to the edge of our own understanding, especially when we're facing suffering. So yeah, we're about to take a journey into one of humanity's oldest and toughest questions.
Okay, so before we jump in, you have to know about the book structure, because it's really unique. The best way to think about it is like a sandwich. No, seriously, you've got a regular story, prose, at the beginning and the end. Those are the two slices of bread. But the middle, the filling, is this huge, dense, beautiful section of poetry. And we're going to use that sandwich structure as our guide.
So let's start with that top slice of bread, the prologue. This is where it all kicks off, setting the stage for an absolutely epic fall from grace that begins with a really dramatic scene up in the heavens. First up, let's meet our guy, Job. He lives in a place called Uz, and by every single measure, this dude is perfect. He's super rich, has a wonderful family, and this is key, the book calls him blameless and upright. He's the guy who does everything right. He's got it all. But then, things take a turn. Up in the heavenly court, this figure called the Satan, which in Hebrew just means the accuser, he challenges God. He basically says, hey, Job's only a good guy because you've given him everything. So God agrees to a test, and the results are just devastating. As you can see, Job's perfect life is completely dismantled. He loses his wealth, his children, and even his health. And that throws us right into the filling of our sandwich, those long, poetic chapters. This is where the real gut-wrenching struggle begins, both emotionally and philosophically. Job is sitting in a pile of ashes, and his friends show up, supposedly to comfort him. So this whole middle section is basically a huge debate. Job's three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, all have the same simple theory. They say, look, God is just. Good things happen to good people, bad things to bad people. So you must have done something wrong, buddy. It's a neat, tidy little formula. But Job's reality just shatters that idea. He knows he's innocent, and he's crying out, asking, why? Why is God letting this happen? And Job does not just sit there and take it. This quote is so powerful. He's holding on to his faith, but he's also holding on to his integrity. He's basically saying he wants to take God to court and prove his innocence. This isn't a man losing his faith. This is a man wrestling with his faith at its absolute breaking point. After his three friends just keep repeating themselves, this younger guy named Elihu shows up. He's got a new take. He says, well, maybe you're all wrong. Maybe suffering isn't just punishment. Maybe it's a way God gets our attention, a way to correct us. And his speech kind of sets the stage for the big finale. And then, after all the human arguments are totally exhausted, it happens. The climax. God finally answers. But it is not at all what Job, or anyone reading, is expecting. God speaks directly to Job, out of a whirlwind. Now here's the wild part. God never answers Job's question of why. He doesn't explain a thing. Instead, he just flips the whole conversation on its head and starts asking Job his own questions. And he starts with this bombshell. The camera immediately pulls back from Job's personal pain to the scale of the entire cosmos. The questions just keep coming, pointing up to the stars. God's basically asking, Job, do you have any idea how this all works? Are you in charge of holding the constellations together? It's meant to show Job that the universe runs on principles so vast, so complex, they are way beyond human understanding. And God doesn't just talk about stars. He brings it down to earth too, pointing out the wild, untamable parts of his own creation. All these questions are designed to show Job that the world is not some simple, human-centered place where everything makes perfect sense to us. So, what's the takeaway from God's big speech? It's not an answer. It's a perspective shift. It's the idea that God's wisdom and justice operate on a scale we just can't see. Our point of view is tiny, and the universe is way more complex and wild than the simple moral math of Job's friends. Okay, let's get to the bottom slice of our sandwich, the epilogue. This is where we see how it all wraps up and what Job learns from this absolutely mind-bending encounter. So, in the end, God gives Job everything back and then doubles it. But the story is really careful to show us that's not the point. The real reward is spiritual. Job is humbled. He admits he was speaking about things he didn't understand. He's moved from just knowing about God to actually knowing God.
And this brings us to one of the most radical ideas in the entire book. It's a direct attack on something called the retribution principle. That's the simple cause and effect belief that if you're good, life will be good, and if you're bad, life will be bad. The book of Job looks at that simple formula and says, sorry, but life is just so much more mysterious than that.
We don't know who wrote this masterpiece, probably sometime between the 6th and 4th centuries BCE, but its impact has been just massive. It's influenced everyone from ancient religious scholars to modern philosophers, all trying to make sense of suffering in this world.
So, in the end, the book doesn't hand us a neat formula to explain pain. Instead, it leaves us with a much bigger, more profound question to chew on. When we're suffering, is what we truly need an explanation, or is it an encounter with a mystery that's far greater than ourselves?